Hello, my name is Christina Chardullo. I'm an architect and designer in New York. First, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to review my proposal for the MAPS grant, and to tell you that I am honored and humbled to begin to share some of these ideas with you. I hope I might take your time to do a few brief things, to speak to you about myself and my experience, to introduce you to the educational power of architecture, and to open up some food for thought on the relationship between science, design, and education. I always believed I wanted to be an astrophysicist since I was young. When I grew up, just north of New York, I would visit the Hudson River Museum often, and remember sitting in the planetarium theater, listening to a local astronomer as he used the central Zeiss projector to show us the constellations in the sky. He'd teach us how to recognize them, use a green laser pointer to tell us about each star, and rotate the whole sky above us with the movements of the machine. Years later, when I began studying astrophysics at Columbia, I spent my summer in the Rose Center Planetarium in New York, in the Astrophysics Education Department, where similar groups of children were led into the giant sphere to learn about the constellations, opening up their world to the larger universe. But this wasn't the only thing that astounded me about the planetarium. As we walked children around the Scales of the Universe exhibit, we were able to compare the object in front of us to the Hayden sphere, and the realization of the monumentality of scale in the cosmos blew me away. The comparison, only made possible by the presence of this physical sphere in front of us by this piece of architecture, was an immensely powerful teaching tool. So too was the ramp, where each step represented a walk in time, laying out the history of the universe, with all of human history as a single strand of hair at the end. It was only because the architecture was designed the way it had been that I and thousands of other planetarium goers were able to come to a better understanding of the scales of time. The way that these architectural elements not only became beautiful features of art and function for the museum, but also incredibly powerful functioning teaching tools drew me to the field of architecture, and to work at Enniet Architects, the firm responsible for its design. While there last year, I was finally able to participate in the design of a new planetarium, this time for Shanghai, where I was equally determined that the architecture itself be as much a teaching tool as a building to house exhibitry. Let me explain a little bit more about what I mean as architecture as a teaching tool. That experience I had as a young girl in the Hudson River Museum truly represented the original conception of the purpose of a planetarium, that being to show the night sky as seen from Earth, to show the movements of the stars as seen from one place in a reconstructed sky above. It is because of this function that the iconic dome is the way that it is. It was not always so. Tycho Brahe in 1585 designed the representation of the heavens as seen from the outside. In 1650, the hollow sphere with constellations painted on the inside was a common means of education and representation. The Copernican planetarium, constructed in 1923 for the Deutsches Museum, was an evolution of the orrery. It was a ceiling-mounted device to represent the celestial movements, one which also made its way to the Hayden Planetarium in the 1920s. The dome itself was the product of a Gestalt switch, an entirely new way of envisioning and thinking about how to represent the motions of the stars. It was born from new technology in 1923, when Zeiss engineers first invented the notion of projection of the constellations within a fixed dome. The planetarium was born from this moment of pure insight as a spherical or hemispherical structure for the education of the sky as seen from Earth, and it was a piece of architecture that changed the perspective of millions. But we have seen the planetarium progress over the years. Now, instead of remaining on the Earth's surface looking at constellations, we use it to take trips through the stars, field trips to the moon, fly by exoplanets, and fly through the canyons of Mars. We have begun to use the dome more as a theater, frankly. And indeed, we have not stopped at the dome. We have used the space below the sphere for more projections. We've created ideas of immense globes you might walk through. We've engaged virtual reality and a whole host of other methods for technology to continue to challenge how we teach and understand science and astronomy. And in these many ways, these new technologies demand new spaces in which they can be fully experienced. Architecture is essential to that experience. The planetarium itself is a piece of architecture designed for an educational function, to create an experience. If we were to replace the word architecture with experience, we might begin to understand its importance to the world of education. Standing in the Rose Center, using the architecture to give you a sense of the scales of space and time, was critical to my understanding of the cosmos. When we tackled the planetarium design for Shanghai, We thought about other ways to make the architecture tell a story about astronomy, and that was through light and the monitoring of light over time and seasons, telling us about our place in the sky and the Earth's relationship to the sun. This was in many ways more direct than representation. This was actual observation, using the architecture as an actual scientific instrument to be used by the public, and to change their perspective about their place in the universe. It is the hope that they might observe the passage of light at the planetarium and remember this globe spinning around our star every time they might watch as the light passes through a window of their room when they're back in the rest of the world. I'm hoping to build on this very initial research to see how else architecture and design may speak to the understanding of astronomy. This grant is just a first step. I do not say that I hope to bring on the next Gestalt switch in the architecture and design of planetariums for the next century, only to open up a discussion with you, with scientists, with educators, with museum directors, and exhibition and architectural designers together to challenge us to think beyond what we know and to explore how the design of a new experience can continue to take us beyond our limited perspective and into the unknown. I thank you again for your time, and I hope this may be the beginning of a long and fruitful conversation on the relationship of design, astronomy, and education. Thank you very much.